So, Bihan. He's a character I've wanted to tackle for a while now, but I wasn't sure how to approach him. Anybody can make a video talking about the flaws in his character writing or how he doesn't make sense, etc. And I don't really think I want to do that. Instead, I want to try and understand what we do have without critiquing the quality of the storytelling itself. So I'll attempt to understand his thought process, why he does what he does, and what his motive could actually be. Before we begin, I think it is worth mentioning that there is a heavy chance that Bihan is corrupted in some way. Noob Saibot in that entire arc is way too popular to not be utilized in this new era. So keep that in mind, but I'm going to go into this with the assumption that these are his actual emotions to better understand him. Also, most clips used in this video are from friend of the show, Sparky Pirate Bro. With that said, let's begin.
Had we not held back, you would not have survived.
The first time we see Bihan's true personality is when they reveal the test held in the tea house. Madame Bo and Liu Kang confront Raiden and Kung Lao, telling them about the test, as well as their future protecting Earthrealm. As I see it, this was already irritating to Bihan. Liu Kang using the Lin Kuei, this clan that in his eyes is superior to everything and everyone, for a simple test. He wasn't very happy with this. This temper, mixed with Kung Lao's next statement, was a recipe for a hurt ego. Upon Madame Bo mentioning more training, Kung Lao's response is, "More training? These two couldn't defeat us." Now, to be fair, anybody would be irritated at Kung Lao's snarkiness. That's something that is a constant in the universe. Everybody would be irritated at this, but in the grand scheme of things, this is ultimately harmless. So the fact that Bihan reacts the way he does is quite telling to his character. "Had we not held back, you would not have survived," is Bihan's wild response. This is unneeded, it's unnecessary, and very over the top. But when you put it into perspective, his mindset and his motive, and also just how he works, how he functions as a human being, it gets to become a bit more clear. But it's something we really can't understand personally, it's something we have to suspend disbelief for. This level of narcissism doesn't come easily. This is something that is built up upon years and years of expectations not being met, something that Bihan is very familiar with. Let's draw a quick comparison. Funny enough, Bihan's voice actor is the same as Gojo's from Jujutsu Kaisen, and this is a very similar argument you can apply to that character. Being strong, being gifted, and above the majority of people can come at a price. It's almost a curse, the curse of being strong. This moment alone, his reaction to Kung Lao, can easily be interpreted as insecurity, but I genuinely don't think that's the case. With Bihan specifically, it feels more to me like impatience and irritation. Bihan has spent his entire life knowing he's capable of things no one else is, being part of a clan that is gifted and prosperous, so much so to where he feels they are underutilized. They have so much potential here that is untapped. This has piled up over the years to create an almost resentful Bihan, somebody who hates Liu Kang and hates being governed by anybody but himself. Those expectations I mentioned, this is what I meant. Bihan wants the Lin Kuei to be something far greater than they are now. And it's not that the Lin Kuei are not good now, it's the fact that they are under the rule of others. This lifestyle doesn't fit Bihan. This lifestyle doesn't fit the strongest. He knows he's capable of more. Why would he surrender himself for the service of others? This being built up for so long is why simple interactions such as this with Kung Lao are met with such an aggressive response. This doesn't make these things right or anything like that, but it does make them feel more believable to me. It isn't insecurity. He doesn't feel that Kung Lao saying these things embarrassed him. If anything, he deeply in his core believes that Kung Lao is incorrect, so much so that he has to correct him in such a hostile way. When he truly believes he is so much above the rest that nobody is on his level, he's not going to take anything from anybody. He is quite literally the opposite of being humble, especially when his own motives are held above everyone else's. Again, the curse of being strong. Now, this isn't an excuse for acting this way, but with that repetition, that constant belief in superiority to others, that curse does become something of a detriment. One of the more important aspects to this curse in question is the Lin Kuei aspect. For generations, this clan has protected Earthrealm, being loyal, effective, and prosperous. The prior Grand Master was true to this belief. He was content protecting Earthrealm, using his forces and his ability to strengthen the realm in which they resided. With his passing, Bihan's motive now takes the front seat. With his new mantle of Grand Master, he feels what he says goes, and he is not happy with the current state of the Lin Kuei. His belief in their superiority far weighs out every other aspect of his life. He'll work day in and day out, fighting for the chance to display their strength and break from the shackles of the prior Grand Master's rule. This is consistently why Bihan is so aggressive in his approach, and attributes to his negligence of others.
Guide us, yes. Shackle us, no.
Now this is where we enter confusing territory with Bihan's character. There's several things here. His interactions with Smoke and Kawaii that can be a bit confusing when trying to determine his love for his brothers. Even in the most egregious of times, when telling his own brother he is a lesser for not sharing the blood of his clan, I feel it's misguided and not necessarily hatred. Now, hear me out. Again, this argument between the brothers and Bihan starts because of the mention of their father, his previous ways, and the usual formats of the Lin Kuei, something Bihan is greatly unhappy with. Something that sticks out to me is when he says their father's teachings should guide them but not shackle them. It's almost a neutral way of taking what Kawaii says, taking it into perspective by saying, yes, this is true, but we can grow from this. And he does this several times throughout the story, where he shares this excitement and this drive that he feels his brothers should agree with him on, so when they don't, he is very aggressive with them.
For example,
Upon being assigned a mission by Liu Kang, he says to his brothers, "Finally we face a worthy foe. Victory will bring us glory." Naturally, Kawaii interjects to remind him they fight for duty. Similar to their father's beliefs, their fulfillment is in their protection, not their dominance. Bihan naturally doesn't agree with this, but that statement prior about them fighting a worthy foe, as well as what he says next, feels to me like excitement. It feels like something he assumes his brothers agree with him on and have the same passion for. So when they disagree with him, he almost wants to educate them, opposed to go against them. Vision is what he lacked. He was blind to our superiority. We settle for defending Earthrealm when we could help lead it. To me, it does feel like he's misguided in this approach, but he really feels that his brothers will eventually catch on. Right now, they're stuck in the past, but they will obey him, or at least adapt. Smoke interjects as well, saying the Lin Kuei doesn't govern, they serve, where Bihan follows up with, "It is our past, but it won't be our future." To simplify, what I'm trying to say here is, he does feel superior, but it's almost like he wants his brothers to join him in that mindset. So when they do push against him, he has a tiny bit of patience with them to accept what they say, but tries to redirect their thoughts. This, of course, doesn't really work. Though Kawaii and Smoke ultimately let it be, they do not agree with it. Bihan would prefer his brothers follow his guidance, but at the end of the day, if he has to reject them to better mold the Lin Kuei to his vision, he will do so. And this is kind of already displayed at this point, with what he says to Smoke before this. Though he may value Smoke as a brother, he doesn't value his opinion on the Lin Kuei, at least not as much as Kawaii's. So he has this sort of Lin Kuei supremacist moment, where he puts Smoke down, due to him not sharing Lin Kuei blood. I feel that his desire to guide Smoke is still there, but he won't take what he says as a change to his direction. This misguidedness can be seen in something as simple as his statement to Raiden and Kung Lao trying to join their mission. Bihan obviously says, no, they are not Lin Kuei. They will only hinder the effort, keeping that Lin Kuei supremacist mindset in full force. And though them hindering the effort is probably incorrect, them not being Lin Kuei is a factual statement. We then see a correct approach to this statement from Kawhi. He says, "We are trained differently. It takes years to master our ways." This interaction is small and ultimately unimportant, but it does reinforce that Bihan feels that non-Lin Kuei are inferior, but more importantly, shows just how easily misguided he is in his approach. The way he handles himself, his interactions with others, etc., is hindered by his pride. But for Bihan, this pride can often be self-fulfilling. Things such as his battle against Natara and Ermac prove this point. Although his attitude may come at a disservice of others, he does get a sense of fulfillment when he's able to feed this ego and tap into that pride, as well as delivering upon it. Battling tough foes and showing his latent abilities is something that brings him much joy. He looks at it as not only having his potential up for display, but the Lin Kuei's potential. Simply protecting others isn't the look he wants. Conquering, using their power for their own benefit, this is what Bihan values. This is what he will build, even if it comes down to him alone. Following this fight between him and Ermac, we have a scene that I quite enjoy, not only for the brotherhood aspect of it, but because of the look inside of Bihan's mind. It's reinforcing something I've already stated in this video, and is definitely the most obvious example of it. As I've said, this excitement that Bihan feels is something he rather share with his brothers, opposed to shun them away from it. He has this sense of exhilaration after his battle with Ermac. As he approaches his brothers, he asks if they are both unharmed. Very small in the grand scheme of things, but I feel that for Bihan in this moment specifically, it's a bit more. Of course he's asking this because they just had a battle, but also because of this excitement, because of this exhilaration that he feels after being able to display his power. He again has this power trip that he feels his brothers are equally feeling, saying, "Good, after our years of idleness, it pleases me to again face combat." This is another instance of that disconnect between him and his brothers. Kawhi and Smoke are there simply to defend Earthrealm, to finish the mission, and do what they must do. Whereas Bihan is using this for fulfillment. This battle brings him great pleasure. He finally feels as if the Lin Kuei are doing something worth doing. I do genuinely feel there's also an aspect here of him caring for his brothers. Of course, I never really thought Bihan didn't care for his brothers at all. It's just his priorities do not cater to them. With what we've gone over thus far, I feel the main aspect, the glaring piece of Bihan's character, is that he's self-fulfilling, very selfish, and self-centered. It's not that he has no care for anything else entirely, but at the end of the day, what he wants is what he's going to get. And as of now, that's shaping the Lin Kuei to be something he's proud of. No matter who Bihan has to disregard or who he has to hurt, he will do so to see his vision through. That's why, even with the several instances of him trying to share his excitement with his brothers, trying to guide them, share his passion with them, it ultimately ends up with one of the most tragic moments in Kuai Liang's life.
And I was right to let him die. Let him die.
This next scene is quite jarring, right? It's thrust onto us in such a way that it can easily catch you off guard. This can be interpreted a few ways, but in reality, it's more than likely just rushed development and a writing flaw. Though I feel you can also interpret it as Bihan's sporadic nature, changing the trajectory of his decisions if he finds an easy way to benefit himself and his motive, especially at a time like this where he's already on a power high from fighting strong opponents. This is why I feel Shang Tsung's words strike him so deeply. Turning against your own brother is still a nasty practice, but hearing exactly what he wants to hear from somebody he barely knows, yet has a similar distaste for Liu Kang, it's all bound to be intriguing. Shang allures Bihan, tempting him with the offer to break free of Liu Kang and gain his clan unrivaled power. It almost feels too easy to him. At this point, Kawhi is not having any of this, knowing that this can only result in something bad for his brother, while Bihan is cautiously optimistic. He has no reason to trust Shang Tsung up to this point, but at the same token, he has no reason not to. Regardless though, he is making an irrational, heat-of-the-moment decision, very similar to how any of us can. It's just hard to grasp here because of the sheer consequences. But we have to remember, it's very consistent that Bihan only thinks about himself when things get rocky. Sure, other things take up his mind too, like his brothers or even his service to Earthrealm, but all of that can take a backseat in an instant if he finds a way to meet his desires. A few touches I actually quite enjoy here is Shang Tsung kind of buttering his biscuit, right? Addressing him as Grand Master, as well as the slight facial expression that Bihan makes when Kawhi is trying to convince him to not listen. It resembles a sense of uncertainty, but at the same time resembles somebody who is intrigued and considering. Bihan is not a malleable person, and I feel this scene does show that to an extent. However, the short time span they have to actually show this uncertainty can make it feel fickle. But again, I'm not trying to hit on the writing in this video, so I do think it is important to mention that it does add to the fact of Bihan's confidence, or rather his determination. To put it simply, I feel him considering what Shang Tsung says here is not him being easily influenced, but rather him showing his desperation to finally obtain what he wants, staying true to his inclinations. So when there's one roadblock remaining, somebody loyal to Liu Kang, somebody who in his eyes holds the Lin Kuei back, Bihan knows what must be done. Regardless of who this hurdle might have been, I feel the outcome would have been the same. Before tackling the main scene here, we have to acknowledge the several components to Bihan's thought process in this moment, such as desperation, determination, and selfishness, an overwhelming amount at that, a recipe for anybody to make rash decisions. This isn't an excuse, of course. He still is doing something that is not okay, but having these emotions in mind, you can better understand his following actions. We have a bit of a time skip here. Not really, actually. It's mere seconds to us, but to them, we can assume it was a few minutes at least. A few minutes of Shang and General Shao spouting nothing but promises to Bihan, who at this point is still debating. He isn't even answering them. He's just listening without rebuttal. The first sense of acceptance we get is when Kawhi tries talking to him once more. Poor Kawhi still has hope that he can stray his brother from this path, the path in which to Bihan is becoming clearer and clearer. It was at this moment that Bihan accepted Shang Tsung's offer. Without even having to say it, his pushback to Kawhi, telling him to obey his Grand Master without any order to accompany it, tells us, the viewer, he's made up his mind. The following exposition isn't super important to Bihan, but what's important is that he displays some doubt. Even though he ultimately has made up his mind at this point, he knows Liu Kang is prepared for war, thus asking Shang Tsung what he has to win this war. At this point, he's not even fighting for the right side. He's worried if the opposition is prepared. It's kind of funny, actually, how this change of sides is instantly met with Bihan's selfishness. He again is worried about himself. Why should I join you if you can't win this war for me? You're making these promises and I really like them, but can you uphold them? Again, adding fuel to that fire, showing us his true intentions. Throughout heaven and earth, he alone is the selfish one. Shang's rambling about the dragon army fully convinced Bihan, laying his worry to rest and giving the life he's always wanted an awakening. The disconnect we see here is honestly heartbreaking. That denial that Bihan had, hoping his brothers would eventually lighten up to the idea and join him, clashes full force with Kawhi's innocent assertion that his brother would care to uphold his father's legacy. How could you? Father would turn in his grave if he saw this. Words from the deepest part of Kawhi's soul that barely touch the surface of Bihan's consciousness. As of now, Bihan has nothing to lose. He gave up his loyalty to Earthrealm, he gave up his sense of compassion, and he gave up on his brothers. Bihan tears down every filter. There is no more holding his tongue. He is what matters. He will get what he wants. This power trip he's feeling, this sense of superiority, it's overwhelming to a peak. so much so that he wants to brag. He wants Kawhi to understand the real him now. After all, what is Kawhi gonna do? Through his current lens, Bihan sees Kawhi as nothing but a lapdog, a frail acolyte to his new opposition. Right now, he feels as if he's on top of the world. Nothing will stand in his way to create the strongest clan possible. He will finally live up to that potential and carry himself with great pride. After what feels like forever, hoping his brothers would have joined his side, that same hope turns to resentment. He explodes at Kawhi, displaying his distaste with their father, revealing that he let him die. It's implied that the accident their father had, if Bihan helped, would have not been fatal. The death of their father, as horrible as it sounds, was the light at the end of the tunnel for Bihan. He hated the way his father ruled the Lin Kuei, dooming them to mediocrity, a sympathy that Smoke and Kawhi never shared. And in this moment, Bihan let Kawhi know how furious he was at that fact. In what seems like a final attempt to bring Kawhi to his side, he says, we will now achieve greatness, almost as if he assumed Kawhi still had some sort of loyalty to his Grand Master. Even though that's what's shown here, I do feel Bihan didn't really think this. Sure, it could have been a last Hail Mary in a desperate attempt to bring Kawhi to his side, but I personally feel that Bihan knew the outcome of this. But honestly, it's kind of hard to say. This, mixed with one of the moments in the following fight, is hard to really tell. I really wish there was more Bihan content so I could fully grasp his mentality, because with the power trip he's on, finally getting closer to his goal, he could have thought that reverting Kawhi was still possible. And if that is the case, it's due to his blindness, this foggy lens he's now looking through that now warps his perception. Look at it like tunnel vision. With what he's stumbled upon now, Bihan sees his goal clearly, while everything else is in the dead zone. This is what makes his thinking irrational. He only sees what will benefit him while disregarding everything else. To him, this is the most fulfilled he's ever been, while to everyone else, they see this as madness. At this point, Bihan has fully disregarded his brothers. As it stands, they aren't siblings with a disagreement, they are fellow assassins, disobeying their Grand Master. Bihan's perception of the Lin Kuei and what he strives for them to be is all he sees. Even when he confronts Kawhi and Smoke, the first battle isn't with their fists, it's with their perception of the Lin Kuei. Showing how skewed Bihan's mindset is, being so focused on oneself, seeing yourself so clearly can often blind you to others, something he now resembles in its entirety. And with that, the battle commences. The battle of morality, the battle of brothers. With his idea of the Lin Kuei intact, Kawhi pushes back on everything his brother stands for, resulting in an all-out battle between them. There isn't a whole lot here I can touch on, but I can speculate about a few things to further get insight on what Bihan's mentality is. I like to believe that cutting Kawhi's face shows he didn't want to kill him in this moment, but instead wanted to try and give a final warning before what must come next. This is reinforced with what he says before their battle continues, saying, "End this, brother, embrace the future." And I know this kind of contradicts what I said about him disregarding them as brothers at this point, but I feel this here is a half-assed approach. Not in terms of writing quality, but I feel Bihan knows they will not join him, but it's second nature to him to try and push that onto them. He's so used to planting the seeds and hoping that they follow him that even here he's giving an attempt, albeit a small one. This isn't to say that Bihan completely doesn't care about his brothers. When I say he disregarded them, I more so mean in this moment they are an example of a roadblock, like I used earlier. He more than likely still feels for them in some capacity, but that's the Bihan within, not the Bihan we see now, because right now, his judgment is clouded. He's high on his new opportunity, and that is something that will overtake his love for his brothers, especially right now. I hope I've been able to take Bihan's journey step by step and explain how his thought process evolves. There really isn't much more I can say here outside of adding my own speculation to what we have, and as much as I can do that, it ultimately will bring me in circles. The last piece we have for Bihan is his tower ending, which really just reinforces his motive. From the first moments we see him, it's obvious he cares for the Lin Kuei. He wants them to be greater than what they are now, hoping that one day they can be one of Earthrealm's great nations. In his tower ending, he wants to find a way to strengthen them. He needs something otherworldly, something non-human, something that will make Earthrealm honor their desires and heed their demands. He could have used Shang Tsung's magic, utilizing the dragon army to strengthen their forces, but Bihan wouldn't let one single flaw into his new army. He figured that sorcery would draw Liu Kang's attention, so instead, he opts for science. Thus, the Cyber Initiative begins. With the genius mind of Sector at the helm, the Lin Kuei will soon meet Bihan's expectations. This further solidifies the fact that Bihan ultimately would have sacrificed anything and everything for what he wanted, and what he wanted was the Lin Kuei to be something they weren't. Call it blind ambition, selfishness, arrogance, or whatever else. This is Bihan in Mortal Kombat 1, and I hope this video was able to give you a further look into his mind and help you better understand his mentality. I appreciate you all for watching so much. If you want to join the Discord, that will be in the description, and there's also a channel membership if you're interested in that. And ladies, gentlemen, and MB beauties, stay safe and stay hydrated, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye bye.